Want to say welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tony Hollis Live Talk Show Testify. We got a special broadcast tonight. We will be discussing the Osceola police chief who was hired, and later the city council, Osceola City Council, that is, they voted to override the mayor's selection or the mayor hiring of the new police chief. So we're going to bring him on tonight, and let him go ahead and speak to you briefly. Okay, so just sit back, and we'll be getting started shortly. I want to say welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tony Hollis Live Talk Show Testify. As I indicated, we're going to be running a special broadcast today where we will be discussing why did the Osceola City Council reject the hiring of the new police chief for the city of Osceola. We're going to dive into that. I do have my guest on, Mr. Virgil Green. He have a pretty outstanding resume, and we're going to let him speak to you because we feel like that there was some misinformation put out there about Chief Green, and so we're going to allow him this time to speak to the residents of Osceola to set the record straight. Okay? So, but first, there is a city council person by the name of Tyler Dunnigan. I understand that he has been making some posts on his page in regards to Mr. Green. And so let me just pull up some of the things that he has been saying in regards to Mr. Green. Okay, so let's pull that up right now. Let me go over here right now to my screen and see if we can't pull that up. Let me get rid of this first, um, because we through with that. Okay, we're going to move that from the studio, and we're going to pull this up right now. Okay, let's blow that up a little bit. Now we're going up here. This is Mr. Virgil Green. He's the the police chief that was selected for Osceola. They had a hiring committee. This was not just by the vote of Mayor Sally Wilson. He will explain to you later also what went into that. So everybody was on the same page in regards to uh, the search. I think it was a national search for the police chief. But this is Mr. Green, of course, and I want to go ahead and show you, uh, some of the comments. I think Tyler Dunnigan was the first one to put it out on his page of what I saw. But let me just go ahead and show you that now. Now, this is that photo is a picture of Mr. Tyler Dunnigan, okay? And let me just read this real briefly. I read fast. It say the Osceola City Council held its regular October meeting last night. A motion was made to go into executive session, which is permitted only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of any public officer or employee. Upon resuming the regular meeting, a motion was made to override Mayor Wilson's appointment of Virgil Green as Osceola Chief of Police, as permitted by Statute 14-42-110. Mayors in cities of the first class and second class and incorporated towns shall remove all department heads, including city and town marshals, when an ordinance has been passed making city and town marshals appointed, unless the city or town council shall, by a two-third majority of the total membership of the council, vote to override the mayor's action. This measure to override passed it with a 5-0 vote, and so there was pretty much five council members. There's actually six council members on the council, but of course, um, I think one person was absent. Okay, so that's how that went. So without any further delay, we're going to go ahead and bring on Mr. Virgil Green and let him go ahead and speak to you all as to what happened in this whole process. First he is selected, and then the next minute, the city council takes some action, and they decide that they wanted to vote against the committee action of selecting Mr. Green. So, without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on Mr. Green and allow him to go ahead and speak to you all. How you doing there, Chief Virgil
Hey,
Green?
hey, sir, how you doing? Glad to be
All
with you and your listening audience.
all right, I just want to say welcome to the show, Testify, and that's basically what this show does. It's simply that one word, to allow those to come on and give their testimony in
Okay,
regards to some things as to uh, what happened in past times or what's presently going on. But as we're going to be speaking today, um, I'm going to allow you probably about 1 minute to go ahead and introduce yourself and just give the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do, that sort of thing.
okay. Well, as you know, my name is Virgil Green. I've been in law enforcement for over 25 years. I've served 22 of those years as a police chief in Oklahoma, as well as police chief in Helena, Arkansas. So I have a pretty extensive background in police chief administration. Uh, so I've also served in other capacities in law enforcement, but primarily, the last 20 something years has been serving as a police chief. I, live in Oklahoma City, which a lot of people are pretty well familiar with that. And I think a lot of people would assume, why would you apply for a position that's out of state? But this was a position that was posted on a national law enforcement job posting, and I applied just like so many other people.
Well, all right then. I thank you for that intro, and welcome to again to the Tony Hollis Live Talk Show. We got about three topics. We're not going to be long, but as I shared with the audience in my intro, was that there seemed to have been some miscommunication put out there, misinformation that is, uh,
Hmm.
in regards to some things that was mentioned to you on the various pages. I think City Council member, Mr. Tyler Dunnigan, I think that was one page where they had back and forth going in terms of you being a discussion. And
Correct.
so, uh, and that's exactly what we want to talk about. The misinformation that seemed to be floating in the air of Osceola, Arkansas. And so, I'm going to allow you the opportunity to clean up any any misinformation that has been put out there. Uh, Somewhat mud in the water when it comes to you, your name recognition or your job title, performance, or whatever. And so I'm gonna extend that time to you to go ahead and set the record straight.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate it. And I think, again, there's a lot of misinformation that's being put out on social media, and people read that information. So they're just going off of what somebody else is sharing on social media.
Uh huh.
So, one of the things I would like to share with you and everybody else is that, the city of Osceola, apparently the mayor and the committee that she selected did a really good job of putting together what they were looking for in a police chief. And so, just like I stated earlier, I saw the job posted, and this was way back in June of this year
Uh
when
huh.
that was posted. So it's taken quite some time to get to this point for them to select the police chief. So I applied. Several months went by, I didn't hear anything, and the next thing I received a email asking if I would take part in a Zoom interview with
Uh
the
huh.
mayor and her committee that she had put together. And so I went through the Zoom interview. The next contact I had was asking if I would come down for a in-person interview in Osceola, which I did, which was probably a couple of weeks ago,
Uh
and
huh.
met in person with the mayor, her committee that she had selected. Um, Various questions was asked. There were a lot of things, several of the things I actually added to the conversation to share with them about what happened with my departure as the police chief in Helena, West Helena, because it was pretty public back in 2017 as to why I was no longer the police chief in Helena, West Helena. So, with me sharing all that information with them, um, they obviously felt that based upon my education,
Uh
my
huh.
experience, that I was the best candidate for the position. And so the mayor offered the position to me, and I accepted the position as the next police chief. So in the last 24, 48 hours, there's been some misinformation that's being put out
Uh
on
huh.
social media. And there's always two sides to a story. And I tell people the best side you can get is from the person who you're actually talking about.
All right.
And so, the one thing that people really don't fully understand the backdrop of why I was no longer the police chief in Helena. It had nothing to do with any type of poor performance. It had nothing to do with any type of misconduct.
Uh huh.
It had nothing to do with anything that would have violated any city policy or anything like that. Um, as everybody know, the city of Helena, West Helena has a crime rate, a crime problem, just like Osceola and Blytheville and Pine Bluff and Little Rock and many other cities in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So coming in, there was some challenges to address the crime rate, and I shared with the mayor who hired me that it was going to take some time to really change the culture of policing and to get the community involved, to get them to support the police department because a lot of people did not support the police department. There was a lot of distrust there. And so I was challenged with trying to change that culture and to try to get the community involved with the police department and to report crimes. And so we held several town hall meetings throughout the city where we talked with the residents about, getting them involved because, as you know, Mr. Hollis, the police department cannot do this job alone without the support
Correct.
of the community.
Mhm.
We've seen so many incidents have occurred across the United States where police are at the forefront of having a bad relationship, especially with the black community. And so I believe it's really important for the police to reach out to the community to get the community involved, not for the community to reach out to the police. And so those were things that we were working on to try to change the culture of policing in Helena, and also to tackle the issue of crime.
So, if I understand you correctly, just want to interject for a minute. As it relates to crime, I guess what you're saying is that one of the best ways to fight crime is to have somewhat of a community police relationship
Yes, sir.
in order to
Yeah.
solve crime, because as you indicated, the police can't do it alone.
No.
And the
No.
community and the police department must come together to work together and be about the goal of, solving crime and to try to bring those numbers down. Is that pretty much, in your plan, in
Yeah.
regards to trying to bring down crime?
Yes,
You
sir.
know,
And one of the things is that, you can put on a police department can put on their website, hey, we do community policing. You can add a lot of good, words that make everything look good. But at the end of the day, it is what you are doing in the community, in the entire community, not just in one demographic part of the community, but the entire community. You're going to have some pushback. There's just going to be some people who just don't want to have any reaction with the police. You can let those people, live in their world, but the majority of people want a safe and a safe community to live in because of the quality of life that they want to have. And so the police department plays a very important role in how people determine where they want to live at, where they want to send their kids to school at. And so it's important that the police department gets the community involved uh, in things that's related to public safety.
okay. Well, I would love to sit down with my police chief and try to talk about, teaming up, community and police working together, because I've always said that there seemed to be that wall of partition between the police and the community. And the
Correct.
only way that we're going to be able to solve crime is that we got to tear down that wall. And the way to tear
Exactly.
down that wall, we got to come to the table, sit down and talk to each other, create some dialogue to try to understand each other. What are some of the goals, some of the things that we can do in terms of strategy. And I thought that the best way to do that is the police and the community showing themselves as being partners as opposed to being, enemies. And so I really commend you on that for, reaching out to the community, uh, trying to create that kind of relationship with the community in order to solve crime. Because let's face it, most of all the hard crime I know in my area are in the black communities.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where
And
where
so,
everybody knows everybody, and people
yeah.
know who the people are who's committing the crime. You got some people who, they just don't want to get involved. But I think when especially the police chief, the police chief sets the tone for the police department, and
Mhm.
that flows down to the police officers. So if you've got a strong leader who is going to set the tone, that this is the way we're going to operate and this is how we're going to connect with our citizens.
Mhm.
Um, and that means the clergy. That means um, every every demographic in the city. The police department needs to have that partnership with, because everybody is a stakeholder in the city. And so it's really important that, you can talk about community policing, Mr. Hollis, but you really have to put that to action.
Okay.
And that action is, community policing involves, getting out, talking with the people. And I tell people, police officers need to get outside of their cars. They need to walk up and knock on people's doors and talk to people. It may shock some people and say, "Well, what are you doing knocking on my door?" Well,
Mhm.
hey, you may be driving down the street, Mr. Hollis, and see Miss Jones get out of her car and she's taking some groceries in from Walmart. Well, as a police officer, Miss Jones may be 80 years old. Well, stop and help Miss Jones get her groceries into the home. Miss Jones may be pretty shocked to say, "I've never had this happen before," but that's community policing. And
I like
Miss
that.
Miss
Yeah.
Jones is going to remember that, and her neighbors are going to remember that. And so you don't do anything for gratification or to get a pat on the back. You're doing things that's going to encourage other police officers to get out of their comfort zone, to do what they need to do for the community that they're serving. And I'll say this: another important part of community of policing, the
Mhm.
culture of policing has to change. We have to change the way we do what we do. And if we don't change it, then the community is not going to trust what we do. So we can talk about community policing, we can talk about diversity, we can talk about implicit bias, we can talk about all these things, but until the police industry itself changes that wall, because there is a wall between police. And
Mhm.
I've said this before, you cannot change the wall of policing, and you have to change the wall of policing in order to change that bridge with the community. So if you got a police department who they've got distrust in the community, they've got corruption, they've got all these things going on, then no matter what you do, the community is not going to trust anything that you say.
Well, let me ask you about police reform. I don't know if you're a supporter of police reform, but what are
Big
your
supporter
thoughts?
of it.
Pardon me?
I'm a big supporter of police
All
reform.
right, then. So, so what do you think about? Let's start with police intervention. You got a cop who's seeing his fellow cop, man handcuff, and he somewhat give him a punch in the back of the head. Should that officer who is looking on and fail to intervene, should that officer be held accountable?
Most definitely.
Okay.
I shared with you earlier, Mr. Hollis, that me and my colleague, me and my good friend of mine, who's the police chief in Little Rock, Arkansas, we have a national law enforcement podcast show called You and the Law.
All right.
And one of
I'm
the
gonna
things
tune
that
in
we
to that.
would definitely tune in, and
Okay.
hopefully everybody else will tune in. We're live every Tuesday um, uh, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time,
Okay.
and it comes on blogtalkradio.com /LA Bachelor. So you
All
can
right.
find us on our social media page, You and the Law.
Okay.
So, but to get back to we there is a duty to intervene. Some agencies have policies that says that if a officer sees another officer uh, going against what the agency's policy is, and that is violating somebody's civil rights, they have a duty to intervene. Now, I'm a firm believer in if that officer does not take it upon himself to intervene to stop that officer from violating a citizen's civil rights, that officer needs to be charged just as well as the officer who is committing the act against the citizen. So we are well past the time for police reform, and people wonder why there is such a backlash to pass the George Floyd criminal justice reform bill. It,
Mhm.
it shouldn't take the death of a man to pass a criminal justice reform
I
bill.
agree.
And
I agree.
so, but when you have a lot of pushbacks from the police unions, you have a lot of pushbacks from other law enforcement organizations. It makes you wonder, why is there such a pushback? Because we're talking about police reform. There hasn't been any meaningful police reform in the United States in well over 30 years.
I agree.
And so, why does it take that long to have police reform?
Yeah. And we continue to see the deaths across this country. And I would also go forward and say that many of these deaths that we see could have been avoided because in most cases, they're unarmed,
Yeah,
and we got to be able to differentiate between what is considered active resistance or what's another one, passive resistance,
passive
and
resistance.
yeah, and so most of the time, if I'm just you're asking me for my license and registration, and I'm afraid to reach at my glove box for afraid of being shot, then I don't think that's what you call totally, what is active or aggressive, resistance. I would call that more like being passive. I'm afraid to reach for being shot.
Well,
and so
I'll share this with you, Mr. Hollis. We just did a podcast show tonight on the dark side of policing. Uh,
okay.
and one of the things that we talked about is the fact that it's very disturbing to see a grown man. I'm 58 years old.
Hmm.
It's disturbing to see somebody older than me sitting in front of a news reporter, tears coming out of their eyes because the, of the
Uh,
of the abuse that they received from a police officer.
I feel you.
And
I
and,
feel
and
you.
so we are well past the time of having this conversation about police reform. We've
Hmm.
always talked about there's bad apples in a barrel. Well,
Hmm.
I'm gonna go a step further and say the barrel is bad, and you got to get rid of the barrel before you get rid of the bad apples. Because
Hmm.
until the barrel is changed, the bad apples are just gonna continue to be put into that barrel, and you're just gonna continue to have that same problem. And so it's very disturbing again that we continue to see the problems in the black community. These things can happen in any community. No community is immune from it, whether it's Blytheville, whether it's Osceola, whether it's Jonesboro, whether it's Helena, whether it's Little Rock, Pine Bluff, or
Hmm.
even Oklahoma City. Every community has a problem with the way police are policing their communities.
Okay, just one last question I gotta ask. You know, should you have became the chief of police in Osceola? I'm pretty sure you just mentioned police intervention. I'm pretty sure you're huge also on policy and training as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
Uh, so the next question I like to ask is that when it comes to the um, um, police department, that is the makeup of the police department.
Hmm.
Uh, you as police chief of the Osceola Police Department, shall you have, everything would have been okay? You went through, your selection and all. Um, do you feel? I'm speaking on diversity. Do you feel that the police department should reflect the community for which it serves in terms of, hiring, if you will?
Well, yeah, most definitely. The community, the police department needs to reflect the community. And that's a problem that we've seen across the country when we talk about over policing, where um, we have police officers who don't live in the communities, come into the communities to work in the communities, so that they
Mhm,
don't have a vested interest in that community, and they
mhm,
don't look like the people that they're policing. We can go back to the Ferguson report and see, the population of Ferguson was what, over 65% African American, but the police
mhm.
department made up of about of probably 75% of the police department
Or
were
more.
white, or more were white.
Yeah.
And so that is a uneven balance of when you are talking about community policing. You're not doing community policing, and you're not trying to recruit and bring and have people that look
Mhm.
like the people that they're policing. And this is also important, Mr. Hollis. Just because you're a black police officer, it doesn't mean that you're not going to follow the same bad traits of a white police officer. We got some bad
Yeah.
black cops,
Uh, I'm
and,
I'm
and
glad that you brought that up.
we got some bad black cops,
Yeah, I'm
and a
glad you
lot of
brought that up.
people, yeah, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, as a police
We
chief,
say the same thing here in Blytheville.
yeah,
We always think that even our city officials, our state officials, county officials, we always think that if we elect black, that we'll be all right. And
no,
it's
that
true to what you said is that, you know, in fact, there there may be more problems with black police officers, as opposed to, a white police officer. So like you say, I mean, it don't mean that, everything gonna be all sunshine.
yeah,
Just
just because,
because
yeah,
we start hiring more black police officers to try to reflect the community for which it served, we still have to hold those black police officers accountable as well. And so I'm glad you point that out.
Yeah. Well, and the main thing starts with training. You got to have the best. You got to have a good training program. You got to have good leadership, and you got to hold officers accountable. And if
Mhm.
somebody step outside of those policy that the agency has established, then they need to be held accountable for their
Mhm.
actions. So uh, again, there's just so many things that need to be changed. And I was hopeful that I would have had that opportunity to be a part of the Osceola Police Department, but apparently there's some people who found otherwise because of their so-called research on me, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know what kind of research they could have done unless they just got on social media and Google Virgil Green.
And I want you
And
to hold that thought on
okay,
research. Okay. Hold
okay,
that thought right there on research because I want to get the audience involved. And I want to say to the audience, if you have any questions of Chief Green, then I want you to please ask the questions. But right now we have a few comments, Chief Green, and I want
okay.
to put them on the screen for you. Let's just see if we got any kind of. I enjoyed listening to the music before. Oh, that's my sister there. She just complimented me on my intro.
On your
Uh,
music, okay.
okay, and this is her again. I want to know why the council overruled the mayor. Osceola leaders or supposed to be leaders are pathetic. And so she's sharing her frustration as to why the the city council uh, chose not to uphold your selection. And so that's some frustration there. And we have also Miss Amanda. Sound like city council is scared of change. They don't want change within the police department. They want to continue the corruption and run rampant in Mississippi County. And so that's another comment by Mrs. Amanda. And this is Sister Hollis again, Thompson, that is. Osceola Police Department does not have a relationship with the community. You talked about that, police and community relationship. That's why the community do not trust the police. If anything, the police are looking to see whom they can arrest, and the police stay in the African American neighborhoods. So I want to know why the city council reject Mr. Green becoming the chief. The citizen vote the council in office and they take office, they have a different agenda as to what they stand for. And so we have some people that is pretty, they're pretty disgusted with, how the city council is not acting on their behalf. And here go, I think this is our last one here for right now. This is Brother Sanders, Tony Sanders. How you doing, my brother? Uh, he will not be in their circle. They don't want the tree to shade the unfruitful will be in trouble. And so you're pretty much getting some support here. I think the majority of the comments thus far, I want to say to the viewers, if you have any comments, any questions you want to ask the chief, please do show them and I'll try to get to them. But you were speaking before I interrupt you. You were speaking on, I lost the thought now, but you was speaking on a topic that I say hold that thought. Uh,
Yeah, I think I was addressing just how we were talking about the difference between black police officers and holding people accountable,
right.
and it starts with the leadership of the police department, and
Mhm.
and let me say this, and I think the, I was able to read some of the comments that the people in Osceola posted on this council members page.
Talking
I
about
did.
Councilman Tyler Dunnigan.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Very tempted to reply to some of the comments, but I kept it professional,
Mhm.
um, and just wanted to see what people had to say. And because again, you are people are getting on social media, they're only hearing what one person is saying.
Uh-huh.
And I'll say this, and believe that I wouldn't have gotten. I think there were over 20 people who applied for this position.
Was a total of
Uh,
20 people?
it was well over 20 people, I believe.
Okay.
So to go from 20 down to six, and from six to three. Obviously, if there were some things that were questionable about my character, about my background, about my experience, about my education, about if I'm suited or not suited for this position, that would have came out during these processes.
Mhm.
And so I have to commend the mayor and the people that she had on her committee because they vetted each candidate. And so
Mhm.
when people say, well, when you have five council members who voted to overturn the mayor's decision, and you have somebody says, well, I really cannot discuss what we discussed in executive session, but I can tell you that each council member did their research on the candidate. Well, if each of those council members had any questions about me or the other two candidates, why didn't they go to the mayor and say, "Hey, mayor, let's find out you are going, you who you're interviewing, who are the three finalists, and once you've selected that finalist, why can't we not meet with that person to get an understanding of what his goals are, what his mission is, what he's going to bring to the table, what he's going to bring to the police department." So when people say that they tried to do their research, well, if you're going to do research on me, I'm pretty easy to find on social media. You want to reach out to me and ask me a question, I'm going to share with you whatever you want to know. I don't have anything to hide. So I think there that misinformation when people said, "Oh, I did my research." Well,
Mhm.
where did you do your research? Because if you got online, you're gonna find a lot of
Yeah.
misinformation online. And I tell people, if you want to know the truth, go to the source and ask Chief Green
Mhm.
about who you are and what you're going to do in our city. And so that's very disturbing because, again, you know, for me or anybody else to have been put through this process,
Mhm.
and then to accept the offer, to sign an agreement to become the police chief, and because once I did that, I had to put in a notice to
Mhm.
my current employer to say, "Hey, I'm in 2 weeks. I'm no longer going to be here,
Mhm.
and then I've got to find a place to reside temporarily in Osceola." And so a lot of things were there was a lot of moving parts in the past week, 7 to 14 days, and so I think when these people took it upon themselves to go and say that they did research. I don't know what kind of research they did, but there again, I think the mayor
But
would
for
have
the
been
record, neither of these five city councilmen reached out to you. I mean, they had your
no.
information, correct?
Well, I mean, again, they had access to my resume. My resume had my phone number on it, had my email on it, and I'm pretty sure that was information available to from the mayor's office to those council members. So if there was really some sincerity into trying to see who I was
Uh-huh.
and to talk to me, they could have very well easily got that information from the mayor. And so I think people can play around with words, and they can say whatever they want to say, but at the end of the day, uh, it's all about professionalism to me.
Yeah.
And was this
And I
professional?
commend you for staying professionals too. As you mentioned, Councilman Tyler Dunnigan, that was the city councilman where you read some of these comments, correct?
That was, yeah,
Do
and
you
there
think
again,
it was? I mean, what do you read into that? I mean, do you think it was fair? Do you think it was professional for him to do that, knowing that he claimed that he did his research, but he haven't even reached out to you? He chose to go to Facebook. I mean, you think that's professional? You think it's fair? I mean, what do you feel about that? How do you feel about that when you begin to start reading some of those comments?
well, I'm gonna say number one, no, it was not fair. Number two, was it professional? No, it was not professional.
Okay.
Uh, the conduct of an elected official is should be pretty high. There should be a pretty high standard bar for an elected official, just as
Uh-huh.
well as there's a pretty I set a high bar for myself, and
Right.
and so I hold myself accountable for my actions and the words I use. And so, when you say, well, I can't tell you because you know that you can't say anything that happened in the executive session, but you're going to get on that line
Go to
that,
Facebook.
yeah, you're going to get on that line that you can cross a little bit, and you're going to share this information. So now you've got people who are reading these comments, who are inputting their opinions, which they have the right to their opinions. They may say, well, why didn't they select somebody within?
Mhm.
Well, everybody had the opportunity to apply for this position. This wasn't a secret committee who said, hey, we're going to select individuals to apply. Everybody who had the qualifications, who had the experience, who had the education, who met the requirements of the application, they could have applied. And
Mhm.
so there again, to say that there were individuals internally who should have been considered, maybe the people internally didn't apply. Maybe they did apply, and maybe they did not meet those minimum qualifications to where all the other candidates met those qualifications. Because let me go back, there were over 20 people who applied. They got it from 20 down to 10, down to 6, and down to 3. So there was a process that this committee went through to select me and two other individuals as the three finalists for the position. And so again, I think it's disturbing. It's kind of concerning that a person who has been elected by the people in their community would go to Facebook without reaching out
Doing
to
its
the,
facts finding.
yeah.
You know,
And there again, don't use social media, because that's where things get so cloudy and
right.
so
That's where you get your
misinformation.
misinformation.
Yeah, and I read comments. There was some positive comments, because people said, well, obviously based upon what they read, what's wrong with selecting, or what's wrong with moving forward with it. And so and there again, and I'll say this, and I think one of the most important things I want to will add to this conversation is the fact that everybody look at me, I'm a black man, and not to, and I'm gonna put race in it, but don't take it as if I'm trying to say that there's a racial overtone with this here. When you have every person with experience and qualifications should have the same opportunities.
Okay.
Uh, but what support do you get from the black community uh, for any person, even the current police chief? What
Mhm.
support does the black community give the current police chief? What support would the black community give a incoming police chief?
Mhm.
And so when you have elected officials who sit on the city council who have formed their own opinions about a person without speaking to that person, it's very concerning. Because
Okay.
again, you want the most experienced, the most qualified person to deal with your police department, because you're dealing with a police budget, you're dealing with police personnel, you're dealing with policy making, you're dealing with a variety of things that you really need to understand what you are getting yourself into, and
Mhm.
not just to say, hey, they gave me the police chief position, so I'm going to learn how to become a police chief. That's just not the way to do policing.
Okay, last topic that I want to talk about. You and I talked briefly before the show, and I kind of detect from your previous, law enforcement. I think it was in the city of Helena. I think you was pretty much known as an officer who stood against corruption. I think in
Exactly.
the conversation you and I had earlier, you believe, no one is above the law. And
Correct.
so um, I think that if you start talking about, especially whether it's inside, where everybody know everybody, and and they feel like they want to get a pass or what have you, but you're a man that held people accountable. You know, you was against corruption, and so I think that's some of the information that has been put out there in regards to your time in
In
Helena.
Helena.
So
Hmm.
can you just real briefly just talk to us about this corruption and how somewhat it was somewhat of a black eye to you? That's my way of characterizing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no room for corruption in policing because it builds distrust between the public. And so, in my position as a police chief, nobody's above the law, not even me, and not
Okay.
even an elected official. So, I'm going to hold everybody accountable, even the prosecutor. If I don't feel that that prosecutor is doing the right things, then I'm going to have a conversation with that prosecutor about that, and that actually happened in Phillips County. And so, again, I'm fair and I'm honest, but I want to make sure that nobody believes that they're above the law.
Mhm.
And if you are I don't care if you're a black police officer, if you violate the law, you're not going to work for me. If and there's a lot of good police officers in Helena who will tell you that we got along real well, but there's some who will tell you that they probably don't like me, and the reason they don't like me is because I have a no tolerance for corruption. I have a no tolerance for being a liar. I have no tolerance for breaking the law. And if you
Mhm.
want to break the law, you cannot enforce the law. And so it's really important for people to understand that. And so when you talk about, oh man, Chief Green, he was fired because of poor job performance. It had
Mhm.
nothing to do with poor job performance. It what it had to do with me doing my job. I
Right.
was an out. I was an
Right.
outsider. I was an outsider, and people
Mhm.
didn't like it, and so yeah, things happen.
Mhm.
If you come in and you fit with the program, you're gonna be around for a long time. And I said this to the news
So
media
you
when I
went
left
against the
Helena.
grain.
Yeah, I went against the grain. I said this to the news media when I left Helena because it was all in the news. I said, you can change the name, you can change the face, but you're not going to change the crime problem. And
Okay.
so after 4 years, I left Helena in 2017. A great community, a lot of people. I met a lot of great people in Helena. I still keep in contact with a lot of people in Helena. I consider them to be friends. When I do go down there, I still go by and see them. So, it was not a situation where man, I just can't wait to get away from Helena. It was a situation where how can I change the culture of policing to where the citizens feel that they're safe, and how can we address the crime? But at the end of the day, as a police officer or anybody, I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions. And if you don't like it, you don't need to be wearing a badge and a gun.
Mhm. And as I understand, I totally agree with you 100%. As I agree, and this is my last question, of course, and then I'm gonna let you go ahead and close it out with whatever comments that you have. Uh, speaking with the citizens of Osceola, and I'm hoping that they will understand that this was a missed opportunity, and somewhat pulling the plug on your selection. But this last thing that I wanted to talk about is it relates to um, I can't even think of the person's name. I wanted to ask you about someone, but I won't put them on spot because I can't remember the name now. But
Okay.
until my thought come back, uh, now just real briefly before I let you close it out, I understand that you were probably uh, the only candidate, to your knowledge, that is, that probably didn't have I think you had what? I think you explained you had a 90-day action plan.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yeah.
I presented the city. I presented the mayor and the interview committee with a 90-day fact finding plan,
Facts
and
finding
that
plan.
yeah, fact finding plan.
Okay.
And that fact finding plan, and I've got it, in front of me, and I'll just kind of briefly go through because I know we're probably short on time,
Mhm.
but just to let people know that coming in as a police chief is just not coming in. sitting in a chair and saying, "Hey, I'm the police chief." You got to come in with a vision. You got to come in with a plan. You got to come in with some things that's going to help the agency short term and long term. And
Mhm.
so I presented the 90-day fact finding plan. They didn't ask me for it. I This was something I'd done on my own and presented
That's
it to
pretty
them.
thoughtful of you.
Yeah, and so there were 8 goals of this fact finding plan. The
Mhm.
8 goals of the fact finding plan was to access the current leadership needs of the
All
police
right.
department and fill
Mhm.
critical leadership positions, identify any critical resources needed,
Mhm.
identify the top pressuring matters facing the Osceola Police Department,
Uh-huh.
identify and meet with critical stakeholders in order to establish a collaborative relationship with those
Uh-huh.
stakeholders. Number 5, to review department policies and procedures and ensure if any updates were needed that those updates were met.
Mhm.
Uh, and this is really important, number 6, because this is an initiative that was set by former President Barack Obama, that an organization that I am a member of. We as members played a vital role with uh, President Obama's 21st century community policing.
Mhm.
And
I'm familiar with that.
yeah, and so my my goal was to determine how the Osceola Police Department aligns with the 6 pillars of the 21st century policing, which are law enforcement best practices. And so that's very important for the agencies now to adopt those best practices policies of the 21st century community policing. The number 7 of the goal was to gather as much information as possible about the community, identify what they need from the Osceola Police Department.
Mhm.
And number 8 was to establish effective professional relationship with other law enforcement agencies, officials in the county, as well as public and private districts. And so, again, here, you know, here is a vision, here's a plan, and this 90-day fact finding plan would have been presented to all of the council members. It would have been presented to all of the police department personnel, whether they
Mhm.
be commissioned police officers or civilian, because everybody needs to understand how they play a role in being a part of this plan, because this is just not the chief's plan. This is a plan that puts a foundation to the plan and brings people into the plan to make this plan. And so there were benchmarks that I had set for myself, that
Mhm.
that this would need to be completed in 30 days, or this would need to be completed in 60 days, or this would need to be completed in 90 days. So there was a roadmap towards how the agency would move forward. Uh, and there again, that's just me coming in as being a police chief, not saying that there's anything bad about the police department current administration. That's just me coming in and me putting in my input and my police chief administrative background as to how the agency would proceed. And I think the public it would definitely appreciate having somebody who has a vision, who understands police administration, who understands that the police department plays a vital role in the quality of life.
Mhm.
It's just not about pulling people over and writing them, giving them tickets, having them come to court, having to pay a fine that they don't have the money to probably pay that citation for. This is about what can you do in each in this community to solve crime, and how can you get the people to help you solve the crime. We're not going to get rid of crime, but we can definitely do a lot better in uh, addressing it, and where the public feels that they can trust you to come and tell you that I saw who broke out the window of the bus stop, or I
Mhm.
saw who broke into this person's home, or I saw who was doing the shooting. because they trust you to know that you're not going to go and tell the person who committed the crime, hey, you know what? So and so told us that you did the shooting. You're not going to get that person to tell you anything. I don't know, no matter what you do. So,
Mhm.
again, this 90-day fact finding plan was presented to them. And again, this wasn't something that they asked the candidates to do. This was just something that I did on my own.
All right. Well, Chief Virgil Hill or Mr. Virgil Hill,
Green,
um,
green,
uh,
green.
I keep saying Hill. I know someone named Virgil Hill. Chief Green, excuse me. My apology.
Well, if
Uh,
you can remember in the heat of the night, just remember Virgil's
yeah.
Hill.
Oh, yeah. I
Just
used
a
to watch
different
that
last
show.
name.
I
Yeah.
used to watch that show. Well, Chief Green, it's been great. I'm really glad that you took the opportunity to come speak to the citizens of Osceola, and also coming on to my show, testify. And before I close out, I'm going to allow you to go ahead and give some closing comments as to why I believe it was, and I'm sure the audience as well believe that it was a missed opportunity for them. You're a man that seem, I mean, you hold yourself up with the highest integrity, holding yourself accountable first, and I want them to hear your closing comment,
Okay.
before we conclude this show. But I just want to go over here just real quickly, and just read a little bit more of these statements over here. This is another one, Miss Amanda, Sound Like City Council. Okay, we got her. Let me see. Police doesn't have a relationship. Okay, we got her, got him. Okay, here go one right here. We just want to get to this here one. This is another one. They say you can't do your research without involving the individual you have concerns about. Tyler Donegan, that's what the D stand for. You are worried as two left shoes. You and whomever you got to go along with. I think that's what it is. She's pretty much piggybacking off what we talked about earlier. They
Hmm.
claim they did their research, but they can't reveal those sources. They didn't come talk to you, and so I think that is just a scapegoat. Um, Another one, this man had to turn in notice to his former employer, and you come up with stupid opposition. What's the deal? I believe you want someone who is already on the force to become chief. Osceola Police Department is corrupt, and I'm not afraid to say it. I don't have to kiss up to Osceola Police Department or the judge or the mayor. I obey the law of the land, so I want to know why this man can't serve as the new chief. We need some clean, fresh eyes. Out with the old. And so that was that. Miss Barclay. She's also a good listener, good supporter, community involved. She live in Blavo with me, and she pretty much saying the same old corruption. Sound like some things going on in Osceola. Pretty much sound like Blavo, and of course this is the last one. Sound like Mr. Green was going to straighten it out. And so, as I say, you was a man known to clean up the corruption, and maybe that's something they didn't want. Maybe they wanted somebody uh, that had dirty hands, or what have you. But in saying that, hopefully we won't get any more uh, comments. Um, I'm going to go ahead and just extend this time to you. We're almost approaching 1 hour. I was hoping to do about 45 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and extend you. Go ahead and take about, I say 2 minutes, but whatever time you need to go ahead and, just share with the community as to why we believe. When I say we, I'm joining in with the, give me 1 minute. I want to take this call. This is one of my city councilmen.
Okay.
Councilman, I will call you back as soon as I end my broadcast, okay? Okay. Uh, that was one of the city councilmen. And so, um, anyway, but I'll go ahead and extend you the time that you deserve to go ahead and speak to the citizens of Osceola.
Well,
And hopefully you will, uh, not you, but they would understand as to seem like there's some hidden agendas here, if you will, and hopefully you
Mm.
can set that record straight. So I extend this time to you now.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say definitely thank you for reaching out to me and allowing me to come on and talk to you and to talk to people who
You're
are
most
on
welcome.
this who are listening to this. And let me say this: I'm not perfect. I don't want people to assume that, hey, you're this is just a front. You're on here. You're trying to, you're trying to save yourself to get a job or whatever. I have a job. I applied for a job, and obviously that didn't work out to the best of what I thought it would be, to what the mayor thought it would be, and to the committee that she selected. That and they gave a recommendation that I be selected as the next police chief. So again, I'm not perfect, but I try to do everything I can to ensure that I am professional. And if I do make a mistake, I will definitely own up to that mistake. And so, this has been again, nothing against the mayor or the individuals who were a part of this interview process. It was it was conducted very professional. And again, my only agenda, I didn't have a hidden agenda, was to come in and to see how I could be what I could do to advance the Osceola Police Department, and to work with the men and women at the Osceola Police Department, um, just to where there can be some greater things that could occur within the city to improve the crime rate. I feel I'm just as qualified as the other
Uh-huh.
three candidates, and actually I was selected over the other two candidates, and so again, just unfortunate. There was some sounds like there was some people who had some hidden agendas
I agree.
without getting to know who I am, and again, you know, there was a lot of opportunities for these five individuals to reach out to me and ask any questions. And I would have made myself available to each and every one of them. And I think the people who are listening to this, who will listen to it, you have to ask yourself, why did those individuals not reach out to somebody and ask questions if they had any concerns? Because if you're going to do research on somebody, there has to be a reason for you to do the research. And if
Mhm.
you're going to do a so-called research, do the research. Don't try to have a hidden agenda. Don't try to do something in secretly and say, well, he's not going to tell us what we want to hear. Well, one of the gentlemen who sat on that selection committee
Uh-huh.
reached out to somebody who knows me and Helena, and that person could have said all the bad things he wanted to say about
Right.
me, but he shared all the good things and why I went through what I went through in Helena, and he also reached out to other people. So if don't just talk to me, talk to other people and get their perspective as to who Chief Green is, what happened with him in Helena, and what kind of character is this person. And at the end of the day, if you still don't like me, you just don't like me. But
All
at the
right.
end of the day, this is about hiring the most experienced, the most qualified, the most educated person for this position to serve as a police chief.
Mhm.
So,
Well, Chief Green,
I wished
as
I
I,
would have had that opportunity, but things didn't happen. And let me say this: I don't hold any grudges against anybody
you don't
out
appear
of this.
to.
At the end of the day, I'm disappointed. It's embarrassing because you got to realize this was put out through the local news media. This was put out to all the news outlets that they had selected me as a police chief, and now all of a sudden there's this controversy
Mhm.
that which shouldn't be any controversy. So I think this puts a black eye on the elected officials of Osceola.
Mm.
Uh, it's embarrassing to me because of all the people who have reached out and said, "Hey, congratulations
Uh-huh.
on coming back to Arkansas. You're going to do some great things. And I've even had former officers who have worked with
Mhm.
me in Helena who said, hey, man, if you got an opening, I would like to come work for you. That
Mhm.
speaks a lot to a person's character if people want to come and work for you in a whole nother part of the state in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so there again, I don't hold any grudges. If there's an opportunity that this comes back up, that's something that me and the mayor will have to talk about. But was this a missed opportunity? I believe so because I believe in me. And at the end of the day, those individuals will have to answer questions from people who elected them
Mhm.
as to why they made the decision. And so hopefully everybody who commented on this person's Facebook page will see this, and that will dispel some of those
Mhm.
misinformation and some of those rumors. And and we'll see where things go.
Well, Chief Green, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think you was dealt an unfair hand by the city council. And like you said, all they had to do was just reach out to you or just ask questions, but and this was not a one person vote, because it seemed like the notion is being put out there that this was the mayor selection, but this was a
No,
committee that they were aware of that participated, and they cast their individual vote after doing their due diligence and going through all the candidates. You come down to where there's what, two candidates, three candidates left, and it's just, you know uh you was fortunate enough to be selected, and so but you were selected by a committee and not
not just
just
by the
by
mayor.
Mayor Wilson.
Yeah,
you know
and let me say this also. Again, I was in Osceola for a in-person interview, and I'm pretty sure the mayor let other individuals. They knew that, and so they could have very well easily came down to City Hall and met me in person, and if they had any questions, I would have definitely taken the time to talk to them
Mhm.
because I'm
I'm sure
just
you
that type
would.
of a person.
I'm sure you would.
I'm not a rude person. I'm not a arrogant person. I don't tell people, hey, I don't have time to talk to you. If you want to know something about me, I'm gonna tell you because I want you to hear from me and not from somebody else.
Mhm.
And so I think there's been many opportunities for these individuals uh, to reach out and say something, and you have to question yourself: why did they wait to do it at a council meeting, knowing that October the
Right.
31st is the last day of the
Mhm.
current chief, and so now this was done with some urgency before I actually uh, arrived in Osceola, which would have been
Mhm.
next Wednesday would have been
Right.
my day of arriving, and to try to locate a place to stay,
Mhm.
and to be actually sworn in on November the 1st. So again, you know, and I'll say this: God puts you where He wants you to be at,
Okay.
y-
I
and
totally agree. You
and
won't get no argument from me on
yeah,
that. Anytime
and
you say, God is involved, you won't get no argument from me.
yeah, and so I truly believe, and I share with the mayor that and I share with this the people in Helena. I think God brought me to Helena. Obviously, there were some things that took place that were out of my control.
Mhm.
Here's another opportunity that was presented, and uh, that opportunity has obviously changed. So, there's a lot of things that happen that we just cannot control. We want to control it, but we cannot control it. And so you just leave it in the hands of God, and let Him decide how to deal with people. He may deal with them now. He may deal with them later. So at the end of the day, those individuals have to uh, uh, they have to answer why they did what they did,
Mhm.
and hopefully that's something that they're comfortable with. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, again, I don't, I'm disappointed, but I don't hold any grudges.
Well, I tell you, we're gonna stay on this here, and we're gonna see if we can get some answers. I do believe that there are some hidden agendas here. Maybe some egos out there. There could be some ambitious folks out there who wants to be mayor, and don't want to be part of anything that would make this present mayor look good. And so it could be many factors out there as to why, they chose to be unfair and not giving you an opportunity to be heard, and so but we're gonna try to stay on this here. There is two other comments. I'm gonna show them and then I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. Uh, that's one. That's right. They should have been transparent. The council was very unprofessional, and this is another one of my sisters, Miss Sister James. She say, "I'm just without words. I thought he was hired, and this was it, and so again, she having problems wrapping her head around that. Once one minute you're hired and the next minute the council pulling the plug. And so
Yeah.
this very
Well.
last one is,
Yeah.
um, Mr. Green, the embarrassment is on Osceola, not you. And so she want to go ahead and, I guess, go ahead and give you some encouragement. And she wants you to know, it sound like she was very, uh, you know, impressed in terms of, your speaking in regards to some things and goals that you had for Osceola had you been given an opportunity. And but again, this is a missed opportunity for Osceola, and so I'm sure soon they'll find that out. And so again, we at the bottom of the hour, and don't be a stranger. I'm going to stay in touch with you, and
Please do.
if we can do this again, I'll come on your radio show, and we can just go ahead and mix it up a little bit.
Well, definitely. Again, and definitely thank you for letting me put a plug in for our podcast show, which is You and the Law. And if you go out, we're on social media, so all you got to do is
All
go to
right.
Facebook and find You and the Law One, and you can find more out about me and find more out about what we talk about on that show.
Well, all right, Chief Green. I want you to go ahead and have a remainder blessed night, and may God keep you and me until we see and talk to each other again.
All right, appreciate it, and thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chief Virgil Green. Missed opportunity for Osceola. They chose to have their own hidden agendas, to do something different, and this was not uh, Mayor Wilson. The city council, they spoke to the committee. In other words, they told this committee who had the duty to go through this selection process what this city council did, Osceola City Council. They told this committee, you know, thanks for going through the search process. Thanks for making the selection, but we ain't gonna accept y'all. We're not gonna accept y'all vote. Y'all vote don't mean nothing to the city council. In other words, we were the big draws. We called the shots. And so this committee, I think it was very, very disrespectful to this committee that was put in place. Citizens from the community, along with the administration, coming together, they did all these things. That was a national search. They did the vetting, they asked questions. I mean, they had the interview, all the things that they did. Every city council member had the opportunity to ask any questions, any concern after they did their so-called allegedly investigation. If they had did their investigation and they had some concerns about Mr. Chief Virgil Green, then why didn't they just call him? Why didn't they had his information, even if they didn't reach out to Mayor Wilson? Why did they not just call him? Osceola, you have made yourself look very unprofessional, untrustworthy in doing what you did. This man had turned in his notice. Thank God that he still have a job. This could have ended up bad for him. You played with this man's livelihood. This man made a commitment to want to come to Osceola, make an investment in Osceola, to try to do what was needed to try to make Osceola a safer community. That's what you voted against. You could have really ruined this man's livelihood by pulling these little last minute games that you did. That was very unfair, very unprofessional, very disrespectful. And hopefully, the next chief you get, I hope you treat him well because you most certainly didn't treat Chief Virgil Green very disrespectful, very, very disrespectful. And I don't see how you all can look in the mirror at yourself. That was very disrespectful. No police officer is perfect. No police officer have a perfect record, especially when you got a longevity record. You're going to bump into somebody who is a law enforcement officer that might have did something that didn't agree with policy or didn't agree with law, or in some cases it could be an ethical concern. No police officer is perfect. There was nothing in this man's file that you are so concerned about that you couldn't go to this man and ask him. Very unprofessional, very disrespectful. So that's pretty much all I got to say about that. I want to say we got some people that can tune in late. Uh, Enjoy the show. Oh, thank you, Miss Monica Harris. I'm glad you hung around and heard this man. Please pass the word. Share this interview that I had with Chief Virgil Green. Please share this. Share. Please share this interview. I want the city of Osceola to know that they did not treat this man fairly. They did not treat him fairly. You know, they did not treat this man fairly. It was very disrespectful. So please share this information. Okay? A breach of contract. You know, I don't know how this contract was written up. Uh, uh, there was an agreement. Um, I don't know if it had some kind of clause in the contract to where either party had so many days to bag out of the contract. Maybe that was some type of a clause that it had in the contract agreement. Um, but it's very disrespectful, very unprofessional the way they did him. They could have really destroyed this man' livelihood. Uh, really could have caused him not to have the ability to provide for him and his family. I think that was very unprofessional to pull the plug from this man at the last minute. And so, city officials, you're going to have to answer to that. That was wrong. I mean, I don't have anything against the city officials, but during this incoming year, I'm going to be calling balls and strikes, especially for the election. We're going to have a special show, uh, and what we're going to be calling balls and strikes. So if any candidate come on and speak, whether it's at some function or whatever, or whether it's to the news media, I'm going to be looking. And whenever you put some information out there that is inaccurate, or in some cases is false, I'm ready to call balls and strikes. All right. If you told a little, try to hold back on telling the truth, I may give you a ball. But if it's just so outlandish to where we know you're lying, I'm calling a strike. Okay. So that's what's going to be my job for this election cycle that's coming up. I'm going to be the man, the referee. And my job is to call balls and strike. All right. So don't strike out. All right. You only get so many balls. That baseball, you only get so many balls. Don't strike out. All right. So that's all I have, ladies and gentlemen. I see my classmate done tune in. How you doing there, brother James? We need to know who led the city councilman to do what they did to Mr. Green after he was hired as Osceola chief. Man, thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't let these folks be so comfortable. I agree with you, uh, brother James, Harold James. I agree with you, brother. I mean, they think that they can commit this stuff. Tyler Donegan was the one, to my understanding, and I'm heard he done been caught up in a bunch of mess down there, and of all people, he want to try to throw shade at somebody, but he was the one that, his page, he was so happy to run to Facebook and put it up there about what they did. They over uh, uh, rode the mayor's decision to hire. And so It's in the minutes. So you can do an FOI from the City Council of Osceola. They should have it on their website. I would get it if I need to. But you can do an FOI. That's a Freedom of Information request. And in those minutes, it will tell who made the motion. Who made the motion to go into executive session to try to undo what Mayor Wilson and the city council, what they had done in terms of choosing the chief of police. Who made that motion to go into executive session? That's the first thing. Now, now you need a second. Who made the second? You need a motion and you need a second. Those are two people that set this thing in motion to go into executive session to take the vote. And I don't need to tell you who voted. You know who voted. It was only one council member that was missing. I don't know who was missing, but 5 council members went into executive session and they voted no to hire Chief Green after telling this man he had the job. So it's in the minutes. And I will be asking for those minutes as well. In my next show, I will tell you exactly how everybody voted, who made the motion and who made the second to go into executive session to pull the plug on Chief Green. Okay, I will get that information. No. Thank you, Tony, for keeping us informed. My pleasure, sister. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's my show. And so please catch me again this coming Sunday. And we narrowing down. Remember, I'm getting ready to go and take my holiday break, and you probably won't see me no more until sometime early March. You know, I normally take off for the holidays. November coming in, November, December. I'm going to be spending a lot of time with family, you know, that sort of thing. Then I have a birthday come up in January. Really going to try to do a little celebrating. I ain't celebrating a long time for my birthday. And so hopefully y'all will give me some gifts. Okay. So that's pretty much all I got. How you doing, Miss Bobby Hall? How are you? But that's my show, ladies and gentlemen. Please catch me this coming Sunday. Okay. Well, I will try to bring you another show that you are very much interested in. Please get involved with your city council, ladies and gentlemen. Get involved with your city council. They need to understand that you are watching them and you are concerned how they vote. They work for you. Okay. You are the employer. They are the employees. Hold them accountable. Okay. Hold them accountable. And for Mr. Tyler Dunnigan, many of you know Mr. Tyler Dunnigan. When you bump into him, Osceola, you all need to tell this man that his comments are very unprofessional. The way he tried to slander, he probably didn't say words himself, but he put it out there on his Facebook page. And when he put that information out like that, those comments that were spoken, especially if they false, I'm talking about false, slanderous comment. Anytime somebody make false, slanderous comment, I think you have to call them out. All right. So that's my show, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say God bless you all. May God keep you all. Bless you too, Mrs. Hall. And until we see again, I'm going to say good night to everybody. And please tell a friend to catch me this coming Sunday, October the 24th, 2001. Topic to be announced on the next Tony Hollis Live talk show, Testify. Peace and love. God bless. And good night.